August and Syd, the queer couple that broke the internet with their inspiring story of love, trust, and devotion, despite life-changing trauma. A story of a trans man falling in love with a lesbian, and through time and friendship, he won her over, creating an unbreakable bond that saw them through joblessness, a global pandemic, and trauma, resulting from the horrific sexual assault that later led to the birth of their greatest gift, their daughter Beau. A story of a young family that faced unbeatable odds, and not only fought them head-on, but beat them, going on to inspire millions with their story of trust, devotion, and love. But before they could build their life together, they had to first discover who they were for themselves. An internal journey, lonely, confused, and afraid, they pushed through and created a life they were meant to live. In this 4-part YouTube series, we will hear the life-changing story of August and Syd. Well, welcome to the show, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
I'm excited to speak to you guys because I saw your story online. It was this viral YouTube video. And what touched me so much was, number one, the number of ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs you guys have had, but how persistent you are and how through it you are stronger together as a family. And that's what I think is so powerful. Because when I think a lot of straight individuals who don't understand LGBTQ+, right? They see us and they don't respect us in the same way they respect a traditional family structure. And what I think is so powerful about you guys is that throughout these ups and downs and ups and downs, and more than anybody else, let's be honest, could take, you guys have stayed together and shown people outside of our community what it's like to truly be an active member of our community. So with that said, August, despite what people might be looking, you're actually transgender, correct?
I am a trans man.
And I personally, like, my test is like, I'm like, boy, you are smoking hot, you know what I'm saying? As a gay man, girl, welcome to the club, okay? But I think that a lot of people, people looking outside in, they don't see you that way, and we'll discuss that later on. But what I want to know is, when did you first know and recognize your gender identity was different from other people, and that it didn't line up with your physical anatomy that you were given at birth?
You know, as a kid, my mom always tells the story of that, like, at 2 years old, I refused to wear dresses. It was very in the beginning. And it wasn't necessarily something that I consciously knew. And I have 5 sisters, so it was kind of like I was just always the tomboy. And then, you know, throughout my life, I kind of felt like as I got older and through, you know, being a teenage girl, like, I just was incredibly uncomfortable and I couldn't really pinpoint the why of it all. And so as I, you know, came out at 17 as gay and started to kind of experiment with my sexuality and how I wanted to, like, and what kind of relationships I wanted to be, I think that I opened myself up to being more masculine because of the idea that, like, I'm with a girl now. I can kind of, like, embody my masculinity instead of hide from it and be embarrassed when people thought I was a guy, which is kind of always how it went. So when I came out as trans, I was 22. I'd been living as, like, a masculine androgynous human for 2 years up to that point, constantly being referred to as he, him. And I think that it took me realizing that it wasn't when people said that's a guy, it was when people corrected them and said that that's not a guy, which is what made me uncomfortable. And I recognizing that it wasn't being called a boy, it was being told that I wasn't, that made me uncomfortable, and accepting that it's okay that I am a boy. I've always been a boy. And when you know, see all my kid photos, you're like, that is a little boy. Like, that is, you know.
We didn't touch this in the pre-interview, but I came up with a question and thought after the fact. Do you believe of gender roles and gender identities as strict, rigid 2 genders, or is there a spectrum? For you, what do you believe that is?
I think that's really tough because, like, you know, look, I don't think that I'm a cis man. I'm a trans man. I think that a cis man and a trans man are equal and they should be treated as such. But my experience in this world is not a cisgender experience. And everyone has a right to identify however they want on that spectrum. My masculinity has always been, I wouldn't say necessarily an issue, but a prominent part of who I am since the very beginning.
Yeah, because I agree with you, because for me, people think I'm a woman all the time on the phone, you know? And I see myself as a man, you know what I'm saying? But I just go with it. They're like, sorry, ma'am, you know what I'm saying? I'm just like, okay, well, thanks, honey. Have a great day. You know, it's like, what are you supposed to do, you know? It's just like, for me, it's like, I want to be comfortable with myself and then also not have to deal with people pressuring me into things or people stopping me. And like you said, oh no, it's not a woman, it's a man. I'm like, who cares? You know what I'm saying? But for you, I see what you're saying. It was the kind of thing where it was just, you wanted to be able to be yourself. And if people understood that as masculine, then that's who you were.
Yeah, exactly. And like you, as a kid, like everyone thought that I was my dad on the phone. Like it was just like since the very beginning. So I was just always put into this like hyper masculine point. And today, this isn't like me putting on something. This is just exactly who I am. And so I do fit into like this binary gender, but you know, at the end of the day, like I'm still LGBT. I'm a trans man. I'm a man. I behave like, you know, a gentleman. I try at least.
I mean, girl, we man spread. We're a man. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, I love it. So through this process, was your family supportive when you first came out as gay? And then if they were supportive then, were they supportive of your transition? What pushback did you get from, you know, your friends and family along this road?
I was definitely like a pretty introverted teenager. And so when I came out, I didn't really have a lot of friends as like gay. Like when I was 17, I was homeschooled, and then so I went to a really small high school, and so that wasn't really a part of it. But as a lesbian, like I got a ton of friends, and it was pretty much supportive through most of my transition when I came out as trans through my friend community. My family was, you know, definitely like the stereotypical, it's a phase. You've never had a boyfriend, you don't really know. But I think that like it was just kind of obvious in a lot of ways. But when I came out as trans, I think everyone understood me a lot better. It was like, oh, that makes sense. You know, kind of like even like the best way to explain it is like my grandparents are Republican, gun-toting, Trump supporters. Like that is
America.
Yeah, and like they have been so accepting of my transness, but didn't really get the gay side. And so I thought it was kind of funny. They're like, oh, the little boy we once knew as Summer is now grown up, and August and is a man. And like it's like it makes more sense for some people.
They're just like, oh, you were a boy.
You were always a boy.
Yeah.
You know? If that makes sense.
It does. And now the thing that I found interesting in our conversation was that leading up to your transition, you had actually built up a really supportive lesbian and gay friendship and community around yourself. But once you transitioned, a lot of those walls broke down. Can you explain just that process, what it was like before your transition, during your transition, and then after, how those, you know, relationships shifted?
Yeah, I would say that like my lesbian community was honestly one of the reasons I came out. I became so confident in who I was. I was supported when I dressed masculine. I was androgynous and celebrated. Exactly, that's a great word. I was celebrated for being exactly who I was. And then as I started to pass, I fit into this cis bubble that I don't think I expected to happen so quickly, but the community almost saw it as like, I don't want to speak for them, but in my experience and what we've experienced is like I became too straight to be gay.
Yeah, too cis passing.
And then we just kind of fell off, you know.
You lost the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, that's the best way. Like I feel like I lost the benefit of the doubt of a good person because I was now presenting as a cis straight guy.
Well, I personally apologize. I apologize for our community to you for that. Because to me, what I see you is a shining example as somebody who is authentically themselves and is going at it, and I really say alone. You know what I'm saying? It's not like you are some rich human being, you know, who's doing this with an unlimited budget. It's the same reason why I'm very supportive of people like Gigi Gorgeous and other LGBTQ plus trans members who are loud and out and very like you would say, passing, because to me, what it says is that number one, we're here. Number two, people understand it more than others of us who don't have the same opportunities, right? And that could be physically, like if I felt I was trans, it would be very difficult passing as a woman, you know what I'm saying? Being a 6'4" gentleman with broad shoulders, you know what I'm saying? But for you, you're able to really be an ambassador, and I do apologize for getting pushback from our community for that. It's sad, but I hope that people listening to this on both sides, right, who are straight and trying to understand, whoa, what it's like to be trans, and number two, LGBTQ plus or other members of our community, when they see people like you, that you're still a member of us, and that you had more of an identity and existence that understands us better than you would ever with a straight person, because it's just not so. All right.
I interrupt this program to remind you to like this video and subscribe with push notifications on.
Let's switch on over to Syd and understand your background. Yes. So Syd, tell us what it was like. How did you know you were gay? And what was the process of labeling that sexuality, your sexuality? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, like I grew up in a small town in Iowa, so it was very, being gay and also being a person of color, there was a lot of backlash that I was kind of afraid of. But I think I was, like August, I had like a little group of friends, and they were all like, I grew up with them. And going into high school, I think it was more about being one of the few people of color there. And it was kind of this, I didn't understand it because both my parents are white. My mom's my stepmom, but has been my mom my whole life. So I always had this illusion of like, oh, I don't understand why I'm getting treated in this way. And so when I came out as gay, I felt like that was less of a struggle than, I feel like there's so many other things that when I did eventually come out, and like I was always hanging out with girls, I had this like, not fear, but I had this like, I was like, I have this inkling that I was like attracted to you. And ended up my first girlfriend was someone that I met online. And I kept from pretty much everyone until my mom read one of my text messages and called me into her office one day and was like, hey, I read this thing and I just wanted to, pass it by you, but are you gay? And like, it was this whole thing. I was just like, oh no. And I had been writing an email to her being like, hey, by the way, there's so many different labels and so many different things, and I'm bisexual. And she was like, nope, there's like, at that time, they were like, pick one. And I was just like, I'm gay. There's no way I'm going to date a guy. But pretty much, I had no interest in guys. They kind of knew, but didn't want to address it. My dad, he was kind of like, hey, I don't like boys either. And so he was super accepting.
Same reaction.
Yeah. My mom kind of took it better, but I think they didn't really care that I was gay. It was more like, can you not only be gay? Can you have other interests? Can you do other things? Can you, like, going forward?
I think that's so wise of your parents. 'Cause can I tell you, I've talked to now for Pride Month, maybe 7 or 8 young LGBTQ plus, and what I find when they're telling the story, it becomes such a large part of our identity, especially when we've been persecuted for something we can't control, that a lot of times the other elements of who we are get escaped. And I think that was so wise of your parents, because number one, some of us wish we, step one, had accepting parents, okay? But then beyond that, had parents who understood that this could be something that could be all-encompassing and all-consuming. And I think that was really brilliant of them. But that said, you still felt accepted, and you still felt the ability to be yourself and foster who you naturally were without having to hide something, correct?
Yeah. And I think at first, when I first came out, I was like, I want to cut all my hair off. I want to be as gay as possible. So like, other gays recognize me as gay. Like I felt like I had to really show that. I know, for me it was jewelry
appearance. And like flashy Gucci, fake Gucci outfits. You know what I'm saying? I feel it. Girl, we all look back. Yeah, we look back and cringe, but honestly, I say we should look back and be so proud of that person, because they're pushing through so much stigma and so many eyeballs looking at them and rolling their eyes. That girl, that person there had more courage than today I would ever have. Yeah. I would wear the little rainbow bow ties. I went all out.
You were very
gay. I was very gay. And my parents were just like, foster like all of the other elements of your personality. Like be gay, but also, put things first and also be gay. But yeah, be less gay. They were a little worried when I cut all my hair off and went really, really out with it. But, I also realized that I could be femme. I could be, exactly the person that I want to be. and not, you know, put this like facade, not facade, but like, you know, only like I really tried for like a year to put
and you can
that
also
foot
be
forward.
different people, different parts of yourself in different situations.
Yeah,
You're at the
not
club, out with the
changing.
girls, you're a little different than you are, you know, when you're at church or whatever, you know what I'm saying, when you're sitting with the family and
Yeah.
grandma, you know what I'm saying? You can let each of those elements. Coming up on Timo After Hours. August, a trans man, and Syd, a lesbian, had survived adolescence and coming out to the world, but were now on a journey to find love and acceptance, forging a life for themselves. They would find each other in a story reminiscent of a Hollywood rom-com, but would come to find out that their unconventional queer relationship would bring up outside pressures and stigma that only trial by fire could teach, receiving discrimination from the general outside world, medical field, and even within the wider LGBTQ+ community. They were queer but passed as straight, forcing them to live conflicting identities that people both inside their community and outside struggled to understand, making their journey to forge a life together a lonely one. But still, they persisted. All this and more on the next Timo After Hours. Click the green box to see my latest video where I interviewed this guy named Sven, who's this awesome, dope motivational speaker. Click the blue to subscribe and pink to see my full series playlist. I'm your boy Timo. Until next time, keep your smile side up.